Okay, so welcome to your homework video for this week. This week, your homework is going to be on corporal punishment. What I'm going to do in this lesson is I'm going to produce a table. So I expect you to pause the video when you need to, and you can yourself create this table in your book. At the end of this table, there's going to be a 12-mark question that we're going to do for this lesson. You'll work through a couple of different concepts within the 12 mark. Everything will be on the table that you'll need, the quotes, the information. Work through the video, it won't be very long, and then sit down and write the 12 marker. So we're looking at corporal punishment. Okay, now corporal punishment quite simply just means physical punishment. Okay, that's all it means. So we're going to put a table together like this. So corporal punishment, physical punishment. So physical punishment is something that's going to cause you physical pain. Okay. So in this case, we'll be looking at the idea of cutting off hands and lashing people, so using a whip. Now, let's start with the agree side and the disagree side here. We're going to put some Muslims and we're going to put some Christians. Now, let's be super, super clear. There are going to be loads and loads of Christians who are really for corporal punishment. They like the idea of physical punishments. Equally, there'll be lots of Muslims that detest physical punishment. They hate the idea of it. So we're not saying that all Christians think that corporal punishment is wrong. And we're not saying that all Muslims say corporal punishment is actually right. We're not saying that at all. But what we're going to do is just to keep this simple, we're going to divide the table in this way and we're going to share these arguments. There are going to be plenty of arguments for why Muslims would hate corporal punishment, and there'll be lots of arguments why Christians would like it. But for today's lesson or for today's homework, we're just going to lay it out in this way because we're going to go over familiar terms and familiar ideas that we did a few lessons ago when we looked at the idea of capital punishment. So, corporal punishment is the physical hurting of someone. You're not killing anyone, you're not taking anyone's life. And that's the big distinction between corporal and capital. So, when we look at it, I'm just going to put down the quotes really quite quickly. Okay. Oh, don't want that line. Oh, don't like these lines. Let me just sort this out. Okay, they're thinner. That's better. Okay. So on the table now, you can see I've put the quotes that you're really familiar with that we've used across lessons. The Bible teaches turn the other cheek and forgive not 7 times but 77 times and love your neighbor. And on the Islam side, cut off the hands of thieves and lash them 100 times. So these are quotes that you're going to use for the agree side and the disagree side. Remember, you've always got to talk about the Quran teaches and you've got to say the Bible teaches, and you're going to say some Muslims, some Christians, because as I keep saying, there are so many diverse views out there. We're just trying to keep it simple for the sake of the homework. Okay, we're going to pop another line now onto our table. So you've got your quotes, they're kind of boxed away. We need to think about the arguments now for both sides of these points of view. And we'll start with the Muslims who would, in this case, some Muslims would agree with corporal punishment. So what we're going to do is we're going to remind ourselves about deterrence and what that means, and retribution and what that means. Let me just put them in there. Let me put my arrows in. There we go. So we've got deterrence, and that means put people off committing the crime. So one of the things about capital punishment is it hurts. And we predominantly like to avoid physical pain. We go out of our way in life to avoid pain. We don't want to get a paper cut. We don't want to get any form of like thorn in our foot, anything like that. We're not going to walk around bare feet and get and hurt our feet. We avoid pain. Right? So in this sense, a punishment which is painful is a good deterrent. It will put some people off committing the crimes, especially if you're going to lose your hand over, say, for example, stealing something really small, like a chocolate bar. Retribution, again, this is another theme that we see occurring in our crime and punishment unit when we looked at that. And so retribution, we want to make the victim feel a sense of justice. Now, the challenge with people going to prison is we never see them being punished. It's not like there's a viewing window and you can go and look at the person that burgled your house and go, oh, there they are, they're in prison, they're sad. I feel better now, a sense of justice has happened. That's not the case. So, if, for example, the person had their hand chopped off and it was done publicly, or they were lashed and it was done publicly, which tends to be the case with corporal punishment, you could turn around and go, I don't like the fact I've been a victim of crime, but I feel better knowing that the person did it, had a punishment, and it hurt. You might feel a sense of justice from that. We're strange creatures, humans, and this might work for some people and make them feel better. So we need to make sure that we use those phrases, deterrence and retribution, in our answer. The reason for that is it demonstrates our kind of vocabulary of what we understand, and using those appropriate terms effectively really pushes what we understand and what we know, and it sort of shows a level of intellect, which by doing that genuinely improves your marks. Now, there are some advantages of corporal punishment. First of all, let's just get that in place. First of all, it's fast. Corporal punishment is incredibly quickly. If you sentence someone to 100 lashes, you can lash them, within about 5 minutes, and the punishment's done. And because it's incredibly fast, once the judge has decided that you need that punishment, it's also really cheap. So prison, if you had the alternative, if you didn't have corporal punishment, and you had to send people to prison, that can be quite expensive, even if they're in there for a short sentence. There's so many costs involved in sending people to prison, the small things we never think about, such as moving them from one place to another. They can't be trusted to make their own way to prison. They get collected, they get put in a transport. People are paid to drive them around the country to place them in different prisons. There's so much expense and cost involved in prison. Whereas corporal punishment, nice and cheap. It doesn't take too much to cut someone's hand off or to lash someone. So yeah, it doesn't require prison. And if we just think about this for a minute, there are some arguments for corporal punishment which are quite interesting. So prison puts people into it socially isolates them. Okay, so you socially isolate them, and by doing that, you might change who they are. You might take someone who, okay, did something wrong, but actually, um, the sentence, if all you've got available to you is putting them into prison or something like that, then actually all you're really doing is you're removing them from their friends and family, and perhaps putting them under the influence of people that could persuade them to do other things that aren't great. In fact, it could make them a more serious criminal in the long run. Also, we have to think about the families. So it punishes more than just the criminal when you put someone in prison. And so, for example, when you put someone in prison, it might mean that their family suffer. It might mean perhaps you've put the person into prison who earns the money. Suddenly, not only have you lost your partner and your children have lost their parent, but equally, you're now in a position where someone is left looking after their children without the support of their partner, and maybe they lose their house, maybe they have to move away. It could have really big knock-on effects beyond the person. And so you've got to think about the family in this and say, well, actually, if they just had 50 lashes and that was over and done with in 10 minutes on a Tuesday afternoon, then the family still have the breadwinner. The other person still has their partner to help them. And the family life can continue afterwards, and justice could have been served. So it becomes a really quick and effective punishment. So, yeah, I'll just leave this bit here for you. Prison could be seen as a negative punishment. It can remove the father from the wife, or the wife from the father, or whatever the dynamic of the family is, and the children. This could leave the family with a loss of income and cause more problems, such as poverty. So, prison in itself, for some people, isn't the best solution. And of course, with poverty comes all kinds of challenges. So, when you're talking about physical punishment, corporal punishment, one of the advantages is actually, it's over quickly, it's relatively cheap. It means that someone isn't removed from their family, all those different advantages of that. Now, on the other side of it, you've got reformation. And if we remind ourselves, reformation means helping someone change and have the opportunity to make different choices. Now, you saw that pound sign flash up there. I'll just put that in the right place now. Now, the trick is that reformation isn't cheap. If you look up the YouTube video on the Clink Prison program, you'll see this amazing opportunity for prisoners to change their lives completely. And as a result, have the opportunity to become great parents, contribute to society, the things we looked at last lesson. However, that comes at a cost. And one of the challenges with reformation and prison is they're really expensive. And so a lot of people might argue that corporal punishment is better for society because it's cheaper. Now, the trick is that corporal punishment is considered a form of torture, and we can't escape it. It is. And torture is against human rights law in the UK. So essentially, actually, we have no punishments in the UK that involve any form of physicality beyond community service. And in community service, it's not designed to make you feel pain. It's designed for you to pay back. You might just be washing windows. There's no pain involved in that other than the loss of your time. But there are no punishments where we are physically hurt. So you're not hit, you're not beaten, you're not made to smash rocks up until from dawn till dusk, anything ridiculous like that. So there is no form of physical punishment available to judges in the UK. And what that means is that we've kind of banned torture. And that's a pretty big deal. Okay, so the idea of using torture is completely illegal. And then you've got the real problem, which is what if you cut the hand off of someone who later turns out to be innocent? That's pretty awkward. Um, that's a pretty difficult situation to be in. We have to be really assured that when we do put people in prison, sorry, when we do give people physical punishments, you can't have got it wrong. You can't really take back a physical punishment. Whereas if you put someone in prison for a short period of time and or for a long period of time, but it turns out they're innocent, you can free them from prison, you can release them from it, but you haven't left any physical damages. So I've got this 5 mark question here. We're not going to do a 5 mark question, but I just want to go over it quickly and just say that when it comes to a 5 mark question, you're probably going to get something along the line of saying, explain 2 religious beliefs about corporal punishment. You know by now, we never use the word religious. We always use the religious names, so Muslims or Christians. And you know that it says further down, yeah, says further down sacred text. And we know what that means. When we have to refer to sacred text, we've got to talk about the Bible or we've got to talk about the Quran. This 5 mark question, I think you'd finish easily now. You're really at this stage where we're getting into the flow. Sorry, 6 mark question. My fault. We're getting into the flow of answering these 6 mark questions. So the challenge today isn't a 6 mark question, but all the information you have on this table would help you write an answer to a question like this. So this question here, really easy. The only thing I'll point out to you is read the instructions. This just says explain 2 religious beliefs. It doesn't say 2 similar, it doesn't say 2 different, it just says 2. So you can go any way you like with it. The question you are going to do is this one here. Just get in the right place. Okay, so this one here is look at there. So this one here is corporal punishment can never be justified. So remember, justified means that you can do it, you want to do it, you've got good reason to do it. And that phrase there, never. So corporal punishment can never be justified. So quite simply, with this question, what you're going to do is you're going to firstly start with whatever side of the argument you like, and you're explaining why some people would either agree that you can never do that. And in this case, when it comes to the people that say you can never do it, we're going to use Christians. So they're going to go around. You've got your arguments over this side for Christian, and they're going to say you can never do it. So they will agree that corporal punishment can never happen. And you're going to have those arguments down here, turn the other cheek, forgive. On the other hand, you're going to have other people, in this case, you're going to have the Muslims, who say sometimes. And the reason they might say sometimes is simply because of the things we've raised here. Prisons are expensive, this is more effective, it's a really good deterrence, and actually maybe less people will commit the crime because they didn't themselves want to experience that physical punishment. Maybe prison isn't scary enough, and actually people need a more frightening alternative. These are the arguments you can make. Okay, this is your 12-mark question. We're looking for within the region of 300 to 400 words. Okay, challenging bit of homework. Hopefully you'll enjoy it. Remember that this is all building up to your GCSE. Take care.